So, as Jennifer said, my name is Douglas E. Welch. I am a pioneer podcaster. I am a writer of Career Opportunities, a column since 1997, and I've been podcasting that same column for the last 6 years. So that's basically where I come from. Today we're going to talk about some things which I've talked about a little bit in the past, but hopefully a slightly new twist on it. I was talking with some folks the other day, and I tend to deal here in Los Angeles, I deal with a lot of entertainment people. And it's come to my understanding that there used to be this differentiation between the type of careers most of us had, working in a corporate office and stuff like that, and the type of career an actor or a musician would have. There was two different approaches to the work world. One which was very personally oriented, for say an actor or a musician, and one that was more corporation company oriented. And it got me to thinking that there really shouldn't be that much of a difference. The world has changed so much recently that I think we all need to adopt more of that entertainment-related ideas about our careers. We need to be producing our own stuff, we need to be promoting our own stuff, and we need to be very, very, very proactive about our careers. When I say production, I mean you have to create something. And most importantly, you have to create something outside of perhaps your daily work. It can be related to your daily work, but it's more focused on you. And I don't care whether you're an accountant, you're a secretary, you're a mid-level executive, you're a machine shop worker, whatever, you need to be taking the knowledge that you have, that you gain, that is specific to your work, and making that visible in some way. And we're going to talk about ways to make that visible a little later on, but you need to be taking that knowledge and exposing it to the world. Exposing it to the world is the promotion part. So often we've kind of subsumed ourselves inside of our companies. We're not Doug, we are Doug who works at Corporation XYZ in the accounting department. And we're taught in a traditional corporate environment to keep our head down, do our work, don't make waves, and even worse, don't promote ourselves in any way. Don't promote our knowledge in any way. It's almost like we go into this little corporate bubble, and that's where we live in our careers. These rules, I think, as I said earlier, apply to every type of job, and I really want to reinforce that. It's not just people who normally we think of being out there in the public and out there in front of people. We need, each one of us, to be promoting our own work, our own careers, and our own skills and activities. As you can probably see, this is totally different from the way we normally approach work. As I say, we keep our heads down, we put the team before ourselves. Well, unfortunately, when we do that, we diminish ourselves, because if the company goes away, oh gosh, that hasn't happened. Our prestige, our outward-facing self goes away. We tie ourselves too much to the work we happen to be doing today instead of to the work we're doing for ourselves. It's often been said lately that everybody should act as a freelancer. And frankly, I believe that. I don't care where you're working or what work you're doing. In your own mind, you have to think like a freelancer. Because the sad fact is, you are. You work under the sufferance of the company. And the company can have a bad quarter and suddenly lop off, oh gosh, who just lopped off a bunch of people? Well, the LAUSD is talking about laying off 5,000 people. Okay. That's not because, you can't tell me that every one of those people is a horrible teacher, a horrible administrator, or otherwise flawed in their work in some way. They're dropping, I won't even say an axe, they're dropping a guillotine across one whole section of their business. And those people now have to figure out, well, who am I? What am I doing? What's my value in the world? And what I want you guys to do is I want you to have the advantage of doing that thinking before you find yourself in that situation. I want you to build your own value, your own skills, your own promotion, your own productions, and to be proactive. Again, we try to keep the triple P's going there. The fact is, you can be a team player in the company you are currently working for today without losing yourself, without sacrificing your career, by taking one for the team. But it does require a change of mindset. You've got to believe that, and you've got to be thinking, I did this today for the company, but what did I do for myself? I figured out how to save the company $30,000 on this contract or this technology or whatever. I bet you someone else would be interested in that knowledge. First step for yourself is then you need to capture that knowledge. How did I do that? Then, when you can, and you won't always be able to do it while you're still employed for a certain company, but while you can, you need to promote what you learned. You say, this is how I figured this out. I figured out through the tax laws that I can do X, Y, and Z. I figured out that through various purchasing or procurement opportunities, I can save X, Y, and Z. Because I can guarantee you there are people out there in the world who would love to have that information. If it was important to you and your company, it's important to other people and their companies as well. And now you've started to develop just a little bit of prestige for yourself. You're showing the common phrase I come back to time and time again, regardless of what I'm talking about. You're showing people what you do and how well you do it. That is the critical success factor for your career today. You have to show people what you do and how well you do it. And we'll get to a deeper reason why that is in just a little bit. You can still be loyal to a company without assuming your entire being to that company. There's been a lot of talk about loyalty over the years. Companies expect to be very loyal to the company. And, well, frankly, most companies aren't very loyal to you. If you're working for a company that's very loyal to you, great. The fact is, though, that just isn't the case. That's a 1930s, 1940s, 1950s mentality of the way we think about work. Most of this new activity, most of this new proactivity, actually takes place outside the workplace. You may have a great idea at work, but it's what you do after work with that idea that becomes important. Because then it becomes your personal idea. It becomes a part of your knowledge, what you do and how well you do it. It becomes something that you can then promote to the world as, hey, I'm doing some neat stuff, and here's some of the neat stuff I'm doing. So don't think about it all taking place at work. Work is what you do, and you can enjoy your work quite a bit. That's not to say, some people enjoy the work they're doing quite a bit. But for your own edification, your own protection these days, you need to be doing more with what you're learning and what you're discovering at work, outside of work, for your own personal benefit. Do you have a question? Did you have a question? Okay. Now, oftentimes when I'm talking about this stuff, I can get some pushback because we've lived for such a long time with the current state of work and careers that it's hard for people to think of different ways of doing it. None of this that I'm saying today is meant to berate you. It's not meant to put you down and say, well, you're just not doing this, so you're just not smart enough, you're not maneuverable enough, you're not, you can't do this stuff. No. My goal is to bring you along of this path. Nothing I can say will convince you to do this stuff. You have to come to that decision all on your own. And this is true pretty much of any major change in your life. People can say, you should buy a Mac, but if you don't want to buy a Mac, you're not going to buy a Mac, okay? If you don't want to buy an iPhone, you're not going to buy an iPhone. No matter what that person says. They can offer information, they can offer knowledge, whatever, but you have to come to that decision on your own. Career change is exactly the same. Hopefully, what I do and what other people who talk on the same topics that I do is to try and give you enough ammunition that you say, hey, I see now a way that I can use that. Because not everything's going to work for every person. But if you have examples that can be given to you, maybe you can try a little bit of this or a little bit of that and a little bit of this and slowly bring your own thinking along to realize, okay, this has value to me. Because the fact is, you can hear tons of stuff out there in the world today. You can read tons of Facebook posts. You can follow people on Twitter. If what those people are saying doesn't have value to you, it's worthless, okay? When I follow people on Twitter, I don't follow everybody. I look at what they're Twittering about, or I look at what they're Facebooking about, and I say, does what they're saying have value to me? Doesn't mean it doesn't have value. That's the important part. They can be writing just amazing stuff about knitting, but if I'm not interested in knitting, it doesn't have value for me. Okay, it has value, just not for me. And sometimes you have to explain that to your friends sometimes when you decide not to follow them, is that you're saying great stuff. I just don't have any, I can't apply it to my life. And therefore, I need to find other things that do have more value for me in that regard. It doesn't mean it doesn't have value. It just means it doesn't have value to me at this time. Okay? That make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Okay. I hope by discussing what we're discussing today and other things that I can at least entice you along to try new things. The fact is, another important factor of any successful career is being flexible, being able to try and willing to try new things, even if it's just little things. There's an old phrase of how do you eat an elephant? You eat an elephant one bite at a time, okay? That's how we need to approach change. Now, sometimes change is thrust upon us. We're laid off, whatever, the company goes out of business. But the fact is, long before any of that happens, we have the ability every single day to try a little bit of change in a very safe, little small environment where we can try something and see what the results are. And we can try something else and see what the results are. And say, well, that sort of worked. Let me try a little bit more of that. Okay, that sort of worked. Let me try. I wrote a column last year on Groundhog Day. I republished it this year on Groundhog Day, which says, the title of this piece is Don't Be a Groundhog, but in reality, halfway through I said, well, actually, there's some ways you can be a groundhog. Having grown up in a state where there are actually groundhogs about this big, one of the things you notice about them is they'll stick their head out of their burrow, and they'll come out a little bit, and they'll nibble, and then run back into the burrow. Then they'll come out, and they'll go a little further from the burrow. Okay, it's safe, nibble, run back to the burrow.
It could be a lot less then.
Yeah, that's basically what I'm talking about. That's basically the change I'm talking about, is you risk a little bit more, then you run back. Okay, and you run a little more. Well, that worked, okay. The hawk didn't come down, the hunter didn't come by with the shotgun, whatever. So I'm safe, okay. And you try, you stretch yourself a little bit more each time. And, it's funny I don't know if you've ever seen Groundhog Day, but they're actually somewhat cute big animals. They're actually very large. But there's something to be learned from the animal kingdom sometime. Part of what I'm talking about today, too, is also designed to help you develop new ways of attracting work to you. The fact is, we've been stuck with the current job, career, work system for at least 2 centuries. Since the Industrial Revolution, when people moved off the farm and into the factories, we basically haven't changed the way we work, the way we find work, and the way we actually produce products in the country. Technology has changed things somewhat, but the fact is, when there's a job opening, they post it. Well, instead of posting it on the door of the factory, they're posting it on Monster, or they're posting it on some, Twitter or something like that. When you apply for the job, you give them a resume. And maybe it's not paper as much anymore as it used to be, but it's still pretty much the same format, the same style, the same way we've done things since the 1800s. And frankly, I think it's time for a change. One of my big goals in all the talks I'm giving across this year is talking about flipping the job search funnel. Now, typically, job is posted, that's the top of the funnel, and then people submit the resumes, and they narrow the candidates down, and finally they hire somebody, right? What I want you to think about is bringing jobs and bringing work to you instead of going out and looking for work. The status we're in right now is we still go out and look for work. We still go out and look for a job. We still apply to a job. We still go to interviews and stuff like that. We're not there yet, but I think it's starting to change, and I will do everything I can do to promote that change. Part of the most important thing you have to do is you have to start developing your network. And I'm sure Jennifer has talked about this in the past. I'm sure you've heard X number of things about developing your network, but it is true. You need to have friends before you need friends. If you have a crisis in your life, you're not going out and making new friends during that crisis. Okay, you need friends who are there already, who are already part of your life, who already understand you. Same thing with your work. You don't go looking for new networking opportunities necessarily when you're in the stress of not having a job. You need to be out there communicating people, contacting people, connecting with people, whether it's face-to-face or online. There's important benefits of both of those. I think online interaction through Facebook and others has actually increased the amount of meetings and meetups that you have face-to-face, because humans do have that need to do that. So consider doing both. You'll have your online people, and then you may meet some of those online people. The thing that online gives us is they don't have to be geographically close to us. That's one of the big benefits. I can have the experience of someone who works in the UK or works in South Africa or works in Russia, and I can still get their knowledge even if I can't ever meet them face to face. It might be neat whenever I'm visiting somewhere, I do try to actually meet some of the people I have connected with online. Because again, as human beings, we have that desire and that need. The reason you develop this network is because it makes your job search a whole lot easier. If you've developed your connections, if you develop your networks, if you have lots of friends, it is so much easier to, when you're laid off, when you're looking for a new job, when you're looking to change careers, to say via email, face-to-face, phone call, whatever, hey, I'm looking for something new. And you send that out to your network. And in a lot of cases, depending on the size of your network, depending on the niche of your network sometimes, you'll get people who write back and say, oh, you know what, let me check on this. Oh, you know what, we have an opening over here. Hey, you know what, I want to bring you in for an interview. Because you've already laid the groundwork. They already know you. They already know what you do and how well you do it. And work starts to come to you. Now, yes, every response is not going to generate a job offer to you. But the fact is, you've already turned that funnel over. You're already starting in small ways to attract work to you instead of having to go out there and beat the sidewalk, stuffing resumes, trying to find some work to do. And that's where you certainly want to be. When my wife was starting out in television, she started out as a secretary, a receptionist at Stephen J. Cannell Productions, and then she worked her way up to being a writer's assistant because she wanted to be a television writer. When she was a writer's assistant, they had, for lack of a better word, the secretary mafia, or the assistant mafia. Because when any one of her group of fellow writers and writer's assistants needed a new job, they picked up the phone and they started calling and say, hey, Roseanne, I need a new job. The show's ending, I need to go somewhere. Hey, and all of a sudden, the tendrils would start to flow out, and I was amazed time after time after time. That person would have another job in a week. Bang. One thing, very niche environment, very closed circle. Everyone in that network knew something about a job opening at some entertainment company in the city. So that's where it really helped. It was a very closed environment. Now imagine that today, what you can do with that type of thing today, when you have all these great communications tools. Now we're not calling each other on the phone, which is literally this is pre-email usage for most people. Now we have email, Facebook, LinkedIn. We have all these different things where you can put out that call, and now hopefully your network's bigger as well. It can really work for you. I've seen it work at a very, very low technological level. Same thing can happen today at a higher technological level and even with more effect. Same thing happens with production assistants all the time. The fact is, people like to work with people they like. And in the the PA environment on movie shoots and television shoots, the call goes out and they need 5, 10, 20 production assistants depending on the size of the production you're doing. Who do you think people are going to call when they hear that they need a couple of PAs? They're going to call their friends. They're going to contact friends. Hey, you want to I got a job, I got a 3-week job on this movie, whatever. Because they already know what you do. They already know, I just bang this into the ground. They already know what you do and how well you do it. And, hey, they're cool with you. You're going to have a good time working on this film because you'll be with your buds. That's where you want to be. And expanding that type of niche environment out to a larger environment is your goal. You want to take those as examples and try to expand on them as much as you can. Yes?
So how do you get there? That's my mystery. I see how, of course, once you're in that network, it makes total sense to me. But I always feel like I'm the guy standing on the outside, like, going, what do I do?
Yes. A lot of times you just have to engage. You have to go to meetup.com. Say you have an interest in a particular field. I just noticed there was a new WordPress meetup that is getting started. There's a new iPhone developers meetup that just got started recently. I will often go to meetups that I am not the target market for. They'll be like the iPhone thing. It's for developers. I'm not an iPhone developer, but I am an enthusiast. And I would actually like to know more about development. So sometimes I'll just go just to meet new people and see what they're doing in the development side and say, oh, okay, that's really neat. Because I have people who come to me sometimes and say, hey, I need an iPhone app developed. Well, now all of a sudden I've got a little circle of people that I can go to. Well, here's a whole group of people that actually develop apps. Maybe you should talk to one of them. And all of a sudden I become a connector. I become a connector between one person and another. I become a position of power. Because the next time they need someone, they're going to call me again. And I'm going to be able to direct them here or there or the other. Or I'm going to be able to work for them directly. Just by inserting myself in there, the more people you meet, the better, generally, the better off you are. Obviously, what you want to do is meet people, at least within your circle of interest. But that can mean maybe there's a meetup group about Baroque music. I mean, if you're really into Baroque music, there's probably a meetup group about Baroque music. Well, guess what? You can go there, and just like we were doing here earlier, this happens to me all the time, actually, is I go to all sorts of different events, arts events, career events, business events, tech events, and I often send around doing exactly what we did earlier, talking about technology. Because people have questions. And they find out I know about tech. It's the old, being at the dinner party and someone walks up and says, Doctor, it hurts when I do this. I don't mind answering questions, actually. I love doing it because I like people to have a good experience with their computer. But I have an in pretty much any group I go to. I have some sort of into that group because I have something to offer. I'm an interesting person. I have opinions, and I have some value to offer. And the fact is that's true of all of us. We all have something we're really, really interested in and we really know a lot about. And letting that shine and letting that show, even in a group that perhaps isn't focused around that thing, is still valid because it gives you that in. I mean, the thing with meetups, too, is you're given the topic to bring you all together. So you sort of you should never feel, I find it rare that groups are really exclusive and don't like new people. They love talking to people about this topic. So if you're interested in this topic, more the merrier. Come on in. Let's talk. Let's see what we can do with this whatever interest we have, whether it's knitting or music or technology or iPhones or whatever. They're getting together for a reason because they enjoy it. So it should be a fairly welcoming environment. But you need to be out there kind of looking for stuff. I mean, going to meetup.com and just looking for the different types of meetups in your area, and you'll see some really esoteric, 12th century literature of the French. I mean, you will see some really esoteric things.
I just got I get announcements about meetups in my area, and there is actually a new meetup group for assholes.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, for people who are assholes. So there's a meetup group out there.
Yeah. I must say that takes it probably to the highest limit I've ever heard. But yes, that is something. But so definitely, I think there are ways. But it takes energy. Now, sometimes when you're unemployed, when you're looking for work, when you're not happy with your job, energy is kind of in short supply. But I can guarantee you, getting out to an event like that, getting around other people, will not decrease your energy. It will increase it. Someone described it with me as a teacher's high. Used to give a regular class at the library, and there'd be days I'd been working all day, and then I got to go do the class, and I'm like, oh, God, I don't know. And I'm dragging myself into the library, and all of a sudden the class gets going, and by the end of the class, I'm like, what are we going to do now? I mean, it's energizing being around people. It's energizing talking about stuff you like to talk about. Sometimes you may be in a job where it just really doesn't interest that much. I worked for a mutual fund company for a year and a half and was like bored to tears. I was doing technology, yes, but the business held no interest to me at all. And I would come home and be like, I just got to do something because this is boring as all snot. So you do have to get enough energy to get out the door, but I can guarantee you, if you go out to these events, if you start engaging with other people, you'll actually be more energized because you'll feel you're taking some action. You'll feel that you're taking, first of all, you're going to be talking about stuff you want to talk about. You're going to be meeting neat people who are also interested in what you're interested in. That in itself is just energizing. And I think you'll really find that if you do that, it will really, really help. Because especially if you're not happy in your work or if you're unemployed, it gives you some sense of validation. It gives you some sense of, okay, I can still have fun. It doesn't cost me anything. Okay, I just get the gas to get to the place, basically, or the bus fare to get to the place, or whatever. It doesn't cost me anything. There are neat people there. I'm doing something with my life. Because, I've been unemployed. Luckily, I have not been unemployed for years at a time. I think the longest I went was about a year at one point. But I know how it wears on you, and I know how it's a cumulative effect. It's like that snowball rolling down here, and you get a little bit more depressed, a little bit more, and some people can lead to even clinical depression. You don't want to be there. You want to find ways of reaching out and getting some sense of accomplishment, some sense of happiness, some sense of interesting thought. You got to keep your brain working, and these types of groups are ways of doing it, whether online, offline, some combination of both. So highly recommend that you do get out and do it, even if it feels a little intimidating. Please do. I can guarantee you, you will find it very, very useful to your work and your career. I was reading a book recently, and by the way, you can now download ebooks and audiobooks from the library to read on your computer or listen to on your iPod or iPhone. And I had a client who was doing this. I had really not investigated it much, but I had a client who was doing it, so I had to figure it out. And for her, and when I figured it out, I said, well, actually, there's some things I could do for myself. So I actually read a book recently called Rework. It's by authors Fried and Hansen. And they're actually the owners and executives of a company called 37 Signals. And they're software developers, website service developers. One of their big products is Basecamp. But one of the things about Rework is they got a lot of pushback on the book because they are trying to do kind of what I'm trying to do. In fact, our thoughts mesh quite a bit after I read the book, is they're trying to make us realize that work has changed. I think work has changed regardless of what we think about it. We need to realize it's changed. And so they said some very rather controversial and rather contrary things about the way they built their business and the way they run their business. One of the big things was no planning, basically. You don't plan more than about a month out because plans are just guesses. And if you're planning a month out, you're probably going to be right more than you're wrong. You're planning 5 years out, you will never be right because there's so much intervenes between those. Well, but a lot of companies are like, no, you must have the 5-year plan and you're going to work towards that plan in this way and these steps and these milestones. So they said a lot of controversial stuff there. But one of the things they said, which mirrors exactly what I say, especially in the realm of new media, and I'm going to use a word here that I want you to understand applies to you as well, even though if you might not think about it. The quote is, you need to create an audience, okay? And their quote is, an audience returns often on its own to see what you have to say. This is the most receptive group of customers you'll ever have. Okay? I know you're thinking, audience? Well, I'm not a TV personality. I'm not a radio person. Why do I have an audience? Well, you have an audience. All of us has an audience. Each and every one of us has our own unique audience, which we can expand with just a little bit of effort, whether it's online or face-to-face. You also have customers. Okay? You may not think you have customers if you're not working for yourself, but you do. Your customer is the next company that's going to hire you if you're in a traditional work environment. Okay? If you're a freelancer, you have customers. I have customers. I call them clients, but they're customers. And I have to please my customers, and I have to find new customers, or I don't have work. Again, just like I said at the beginning, these terms apply to all of us, whether we're in a traditional work environment or not. And the more you can think of it that way, the more you can think of having an audience and having customers, the better off you will be. If you're in a company, you may have your audience and customers may basically be the departments or people you service within your company. It could also be, as I said before, outside of the work environment, there's an audience for the knowledge you have, the expert knowledge you have about what you do that you've learned perhaps working for the company but could apply to any other company. As I said, figuring out ways to save money via tax laws or via purchasing or whatever. That's knowledge. There is an audience for that knowledge. And you really need to remember that. They had another great quote. The great chefs like Bobby Flay, Mario Batali, Gordon Ramsay, they're well known because they share everything they know. And you should too. A lot of people get tied up with, well, if I share it, then someone else can duplicate it. Okay, and there's a great further quote that I didn't ever. They still, say Mario Batali doesn't worry that when he puts out a cookbook, you're going to buy the cookbook, set up a restaurant next door to him, and put him out of business. Okay, having the knowledge does not mean having the wherewithal to do what he does. He's giving you a recipe. He's giving you a way to come close to what he might do in the restaurant, but he has so much more beyond the recipe that he does to make a successful restaurant and make himself a successful personality, that there's really no worries of someone simply duplicating what he does. You are exactly the same way. I personally find that the more I share, the better off I am, because the better off people around me are. It's all about sharing the wealth. The more you share, the more people share with you, the more discussion happens, the more interaction happens, and everyone is better off for it. This is one of the reasons we do Career Camp. It's to bring out this latent knowledge that exists. It's not about bringing in experts from the outside. It's about taking the knowledge that already exists in the people who attend that unconference and bringing it out to everybody else who's there. Suddenly, the part of an unconference philosophy is there are no A-listers. There are no experts at an unconference. So the fact is, you can turn that around. Everyone is an expert in something. I describe an expert as someone who has one more piece of knowledge or one more experience than someone else. Because if you have that information, that's information that somebody else needs and wants. And you really need to think of that yourself. If you have one experience about, for example, let's take the immigrant experience. If you have the experience of coming to America as an immigrant and dealing with the system and dealing with the culture and dealing with everything else, there are other people out there who could use that knowledge when they start their movement here. Okay, I mean, that's just one that I pluck out of the air, but imagine if you had someone here who could help guide you through the process, both culturally and bureaucratically and everything else. It would make your path so much easier. Well, guess what? Any piece of knowledge acts in that way. You can help someone else through a process you've been through. You can help someone else through the job search process or through the freelance process or whatever. You have knowledge that needs to be shared and should be shared. Yes?
I wanted to share this. I'm a writer, producer for 20 years, freelancer. So I identify a lot with what you're saying. A Hispanic. But I had a problem with this last part that you're saying, because if I share my knowledge, and I know that you're saying about the how to. I know the how to. I know the what to do, but I know the how to. But in my field, Hispanic television, it's hard. It's hard. You maybe don't have the tools, and you give out the idea, and another person does it.
Writers are really worried about this as well. You'll often hear at a writers' conference or a writers' meetup, "Oh, I can't tell you my idea because you'll steal it." And the fact is, my take on a story will always be different than your take on a story. They could take the exact same idea. They're going to, just by the very nature of who we are as human beings, they're going to execute that story in a different way. Maybe better, maybe worse. It's going to be different. So by giving and sharing the knowledge, you're not risking your own career, because, just as I said, like about someone like Mario Batali, just because they have a few facts, a few hints, a few tips, doesn't mean they can do what you do. Okay? So we do need to understand we have unique knowledge in ourselves that will always be unique to us, no matter how much we share. What sharing does is exposes that knowledge to other people you can perhaps partner with, or might want to hire you to use that knowledge. But if they don't know you have the knowledge, they can't hire you.
You're right. But I had an experience last year, and because I worked for her in a non-profit and giving my idea for 3 months for free. And at the end, and she said, I just wanted to sit with you and get all your ideas and bring. We didn't do anything, and she hasn't done anything. So my point is, when is the limit? Well,
and that's something you need to decide for yourself. Because yes, trust me, I deal with this all the time. I'm out there and I'm cheering people on and I'm coaching people on, and it goes nowhere. And the fact is, it's actually easy to see early on in a process with someone if it's actually going to go anywhere. Because for me, action begets action. And if it's all talk up front, it's going to be all talk for months. There needs to be some action. There needs to be, let's do this. Well, I'm not ready to do that. Well, we need to get something out there. We need to do something. We need to have some product, some deliverable that we're giving out. And that's a way of judging people like that sometimes, is say, how biased are they towards action? Nike says, just do it. Frankly, it's a great way of putting it, because if you don't do it, everything is worthless. If you don't, there's a famous author, Seth Godin, who does lots and lots of business books and innovation books and creativity books, and his mantra this last couple months has been, ship it. It's a term from the software development world. People can't buy your software if you don't ship it. So you have, every day, you've got to ship something. It may not be perfect. It may not be exactly what you want, but perfection is the hobgoblin of good, okay? And you've got to ship something. You can always improve it. You can always add more features. You can always neaten up the process. You can always rewrite the article. You can always improve on it, but if you don't ship it, it has less than worthless value, because now you've spent time on something that resulted in nothing. So you basically, and I have to remind myself of this all the time, you've basically wasted your time. You're never going to waste your time creating something if you then ship it in some format, even if it's just sharing it with someone for free. If I write an ebook and maybe it doesn't feel like it has enough value to actually charge for, I'm going to put it out there anywhere, because it's going to have value to someone, even if I'm having a little issue about how much value I was able to provide. You got to get it out there. Scripts don't sell themselves in a drawer. Music does not sell itself in the recorder. Books don't sell themselves in the stack of paper on your desk. They only benefit you if you ship it, if you show it to somebody, if you sell it to somebody, if you get it out there. Even the act of a book, sending it out to agents, sending it out to publishing houses, you got to get it off your desk, because until it happens, it has less than no value to you. The chances of selling your script if it's in the drawer are exactly zero. Anything you do will move that needle above zero. And to me, that's a great thing. Okay? So don't, how am I going to say this? Yes, there are people out there who want to take advantage of you. Your job is to figure that out as quickly as possible. Okay? And the fact is, there's some red flags. Not taking action. Big red flag for me. They'll talk to me once or twice, and I'll say, we got to do X, Y, and Z. And if I don't see movement, sorry, you're not engaged. You're not. The worst situation I find myself in there is people who've been told they should be doing something, but don't really want to do it. I've been told. People keep telling me I should be on Twitter. I was like, well, yeah, you should be, but do you want to be on Twitter? Because if you don't want to be, you're not going to do it. And so when I hear that someone told me I need to be, that's a red flag to me. And I immediately goes, oh, okay. They think that someone else thinks they should be there. They don't think they should be there. Does that make sense? That's one of those red flag goes up. And there are things like that when you're dealing with people that you'll notice. You'll start to notice the more as you deal with people more and more. You'll see those. And if you look back at your previous interactions with people, you go, that's what was happening, wasn't it? Okay. You can start to recognize those red flags in your past experiences and apply them to your future. I share to a fault. People often say, don't you give too much away. I'll be at a party and say, Dr. Hurts, and I do, that whole... I'll give people detailed instructions on how to do something, but the fact is, if someone comes to me a problem and I go beyond like 2 steps, they go, just come and fix it. How much do you cost? Just come and fix it. I can't give away too much, because people don't have the technological mind, or don't want the technological mindset that I have. And so I get to 1 or 2 steps and I'm like, just come and fix it. And I make a business out of just come and fix it. I really do. And I think you'll find that to be the case too. You'll get to, we have to do X, Y, and Z, and X, Y, and Z, and everything. And they're going, well, can you do this for me? Oh, yeah, I can do this for you. And here's how much it's going to cost. And, and you move into that new phase, because they don't want to become an expert at what you're an expert in. Why should they? You're an expert in it. They don't have to learn everything you know. They can hire you to do it. And that's definitely the way to think about it. I have this knowledge. I have developed this knowledge over many, many years. I can do this for you. And, let's make an agreement. Sometimes that's hard. People will say, well, can I pick your brain over coffee? This is a common discussion that comes up on the internet. It's like, no. Because typically someone who says that, unfortunately,
Something for nothing.
they want something for nothing. And even worse, they might be one of these people that wants to pick your brain and not do anything with it. To me, that is frustrating as all heck for me.
High energy too.
I deal with that, and I'm like, no, you just sucked 2 hours of my time out of my. I want my 2 hours back. So does that help?
Yes.
Does that help?
Yes.
Okay. It is a human nature thing that we all have to deal with, especially here in LA, even more so than Cleveland. You'll find those similar things happening everywhere, but there are certain things about LA that are unique. Because of the world we live in, the entertainment industry. Again, they've been living in this world I'm talking about for decades, for centuries, for a century or more. We're just learning how to play in their world, and sometimes it can get a little rough sometimes. Question?
Well, it just overwhelms me, and where I break down the ship it.
Ship it!
I'm so much so afraid that someone's going to take my stuff. It's that I feel kind of overwhelmed at the amount of information that's already out there. And like you're saying, okay, I have something to contribute that's from a different angle or whatever it is, from my own experience or whatever, but somehow I feel like I'm kind of like outside of the dialogue. Like how do I get in there? Kind of get more people coming to the website,
Well, I think something similar that I run into is often I'll write tech stuff that I find, I'm writing going, oh, this is so basic. This is so common sense. The career column too. I'll even preface the column sometimes. I know this sounds stupid, but, and the fact is, it can have more value than some book-long treatise on the topic because, for whatever reason, I have the ability to explain technology in a clear way. My business cards used to say, I make computing clear, when I was doing that more full-time. And that is something I discovered, that I have the ability to not just talk about technology, but to talk about technology to novice users and people who are scared of technology, and in a way that they can actually start feeling comfortable with it. That was my in. I may be writing an article that someone else has already written, on a topic someone else has already written about, but I'm doing it in a unique way that it has value to a certain group of people. And that's the way you need to think of it too. You may think, when I give talks sometimes, I'll if I give the same talk a couple times in a row, it's a little, I have to kick myself because it feels like I'm repeating myself. And the fact is, I am repeating myself, but the audience is entirely different. Okay? And so you yourself have to kind of kick yourself in the head and say, it's a whole new audience. They have never heard this before. Just because I presented it before does not mean they've heard it. And that's a good reminder to give yourself, is what's my unique take on it? Because that's something you should be doing in anything you do. People are interested in what you have to say about something. They're not interested. Actually, an article filled with quotes, lots of quotes from other people, or books filled with lots of quotes from other people, don't interest me nearly as much as someone who has their own opinions about something. I can get those quotes from the books they came from. I can only get your opinion and your knowledge from you. So, as we get into some of the ways of getting the word out, we'll talk a little bit more about that. One of the biggest reasons for doing this too is to present the world a well-rounded picture of who you are. If you follow me on Twitter, you know I'm a coffee freak and I'm a wine freak and I'm a bit of a foodie, but I'm also fussy about what I eat. Okay, I'm usually just in the nature of the types of things I post on Facebook and Twitter, you've learned something about me that you would only know if you'd actually sat down and had dinner with me perhaps sometime. I think providing a well-rounded picture of yourself helps in the job search in a number of ways. One of the biggest ways is putting on my manager hat and saying, okay, I have all these candidates that I'm looking through to hire. If I know some of your other interests, I'm going to feel more comfortable making you an offer for the job over someone who I basically have a bare resume and one interview with. I know you better. Yes, it may be in a slightly superficial way, but I have more information. Too often hiring decisions are made with no information. What can you really learn from an interview? In fact, there's a lot of people who are saying the interview process, the typical interview process is totally flawed. You're much better giving someone a written test when they come in. Say, do the test. That is actually a better indication of their knowledge than having an interview with them. Because we don't ask the right questions. We don't have the right discussions. We don't ask the hard questions. We don't ask those deeper questions of, well, you're going to be doing X, Y, and Z. Do you have any philosophical problems with that type of work?
We don't ask them.
No,
So
no,
it's
you know, people, right? It's that power struggle. You think and in a lot of cases they do have all the power, and you need to, by doing some of this stuff, you can actually help to balance that power thing out a little bit. They're courting you as much as you were courting them because you have something they really need, and if you can prove that, if you can show that to them. I learned this when I interviewed for Disney years ago. I came in and I actually was kind of underplaying my skill set a little bit because I didn't have experience doing, in this point, Macintosh. I had my own Mac, but I had not supported it in a corporate environment. This is back in the days before networks and all that. I mean, this was early. But what I had done is I had created a hypercard stack of all the parks in the Santa Monica Mountains just on my own. I wanted to do something fun, and I wanted to learn the products, and I brought that with me. Blew them away. Demonstrated exactly what I could do, how well I could do it, and could explain how I did it, which is the other important thing. If you do something, make sure you explain how you did it. Cemented the job. Because they were like, well, you're underplaying your expertise, but this shows you've got, tons of it. And it's like, okay, fine. I feel I'm able to prove that now, so there you go. So you can take that, old school, bring it on a floppy thing to what you put out there on your Facebook, on your Twitter, on your LinkedIn. You can prove that knowledge. It also allows you to highlight experience, like I was just saying, outside of your normal work. I didn't work on the Mac in a corporate environment, but I played around with it a lot. Okay? How does that fit in a resume? It doesn't. It does fit on Twitter. It does fit on Facebook. It does fit on LinkedIn. Okay? I am the founder of Career Camp. Well, on a traditional resume, if I'm going for a tech job, that really doesn't fit anywhere in there. But on my LinkedIn resume, it's part of what I do. You'll see that I actually have several organizations that I work with. And it gives a better overview of what I do. It allows you to highlight things like, you like to be outdoors. You go on hiking, you do charity walks, you do charity hikes, you do beach cleanup days, whatever like that. It also allows you to point out jobs you might like to have in the future. Maybe that transitional job, you say, well, I'm doing this now, but what I really am interested in is doing this. Well, it gives you a place to talk about that stuff and to highlight that so that someone can come along and say, really, you want to do that? I didn't know that about you. Oh, there's still close friends I have today. I have no idea what their job goals are. I have no idea what their career goals are because they never talk about it. They never say, they'll complain about their job, but they won't say what they want to do. And you need to talk about that. You need to say, well, I would really like this, and here's what I'm doing to work towards that. I want to work in robotics, so I'm actually building my own robots. Whatever, something like this, talking about my son, basically. But share that information. Get that out there. Give people an opportunity to know you better and to actually help act on some of these things you might want to do. Because you never know who that audience is going to be. You never know who's going to look at your LinkedIn and go, oh, really, they do this, and they're interested in that? So they want to get in robotics, but they actually have accounting skills. You know what? How do you like to do accounting at a robotics company? There's a combination. There's a hybrid of it, and maybe you can then move over. Not to say you can't do that. I call them, in the high-tech world, I call them high-tech hybrids, where if you wanted to work in technology, there was a time when IT was the golden career everybody wanted to do, and you had a lot of people who wanted to transition into it. And I would say, well, what do you do now? Well, I'm a paralegal, or I'm a nurse, or, okay, find an IT job at a hospital, find an IT job at a law firm, find an IT job at a music company. Take the knowledge you have. You are more useful to that company because you have knowledge from both sides of the house. Okay, so think about that yourself. Online technology like Facebook and Twitter and stuff also helps us share our special skills and accomplishments. I know for myself, I am the worst at seeing my own successes. I am constantly going, well, it could have been better. Well, it could have been, that was good, but it could have been more. Or that was, we just have trouble seeing our own successes sometimes. But having a place to talk about them helps with that, because it gives us a place to put them and to talk about them. It helps you to document events that you've been involved with. It points out to your friends things that you might be interested in doing, like we said earlier. You post on your blog about doing a 5-mile walk for some charity. Oh, you do that? Do you like walking? I didn't know you like walking. You like hiking? Let's go hiking. It leads to more knowledge, more information leads to more discussion, more conversation. By helping others see what they have to say too, it helps us see more of what we have to say. There's some situations where I'm very good at helping other people, but applying that same rule to me is very, very difficult. I can come up with products that anyone else could create, but creating products for my own self is like, I have a block against it. I really do. But by helping others, I get more and more examples of what I could do. And it's got to help along the way. Here are your action items. Okay? You talked about, what do I do? Get a blog. And I know I've said this before, but I really mean this. Everyone should have, to quote George Carlin, a place for their stuff. Okay? You need a home base. It's free. Okay? They're WordPress.com, Blogger.com. Totally free. You can be up and posting information on your blog in under 5 minutes. And I seriously mean that. I mean that. I've done it in a class. I stepped them from starting the browser to posting the first item, 5 minutes. Once you have a place to put your stuff, you'll suddenly find stuff to put there. Because you've had stuff rattling around in your mind that you wanted to talk about or wanted to share, and you didn't have any place to put them. If you're a heavy Facebook user, a lot of people kind of will use Facebook as a blog, and that's okay, except that it doesn't expose yourself as publicly as a blog does. Because people have to be your friends to basically, see a lot of the information on your Facebook. It should be work-related or not. If you can talk about stuff you learned at work, maybe you need to make it a little anonymous about how you discovered this idea. Well, I came across this, blah, blah, blah. And you just make it, if you're sensitive about what the company might say, make it anonymous. Make it, here's something I've been thinking of, and I did this, and this has worked out really well. The blog, too, very important to remember, the blog is about you, not your work, not your job. Okay? It's about you and your career. My tagline for careers is always helping to build the career you deserve. I always approach careers from you, the individual, because you're the one that has to live with it. Okay? You're the one that has to live, just like you're the one that has to live with a bad haircut. Okay? You're the one who has to live with your career, nobody else. And nobody else can make or should make decisions about your career because they don't have to live with them. And frankly, it's easy for people to make decisions for other people sometimes. You need to be one standing up going, no, that's not good for me. It's not a good match for me. It's not what I want to do. I need for myself, for my own personal self-preservation, I need to say, no, that's probably not for me. Okay? Do it. If you haven't done it already, please do it. Send me your link. Send me the address to your blog when you do it. I will take a look at them. I will subscribe, whatever. And start sharing interesting stuff. It can be pictures. We talked about Flickr earlier. One of the great things about Flickr is an online photo sharing site is you can upload stuff to Flickr and then link it to your blog. Link it into Facebook. Link it into LinkedIn. You can connect all this stuff up. I like taking photos. I go around and I pop photos of plants for my gardening blog or interesting things I see. I just do it as a natural part of my life. The blog just simply gives me a place to share this. And you know what? I get people all the time who say, wow, that's great. How did you do this? I've actually, my joke is I'm a great dilettante because I've done a lot of everything at this level professionally. I've sold a painting. I've sold a photograph commercially. I've played music commercially. I've done all these things. I don't do them as my career, but I've done a little bit. And all of those have come out from the fact that I simply do those things and some opportunity happens to pop up. We used to hang out at a coffee house. We used to have regular art shows. I showed the guys, a collection of art that I had created, watercolor art. They said, we'll do a show for you. Well, that's not going to happen at a big gallery downtown, okay? But it's going to happen in a smaller place. And sure enough, 2 of the pieces sold. Okay, I'm not a professional artist. Didn't expect that. That can happen to you as well. And you need to provide for those opportunities. Next, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Pick one, pick them all, I don't care. Engage in them. Connect with your face-to-face friends first. People you know first. They will then lead you to other friends of friends connections that you will find interesting. Do not become a promiscuous friender. Okay? Well, the trouble is you get too much noise in Facebook if you're a promiscuous friender. Too much that doesn't have value to you. Also, prune your social networks. If someone had value but doesn't any longer, unfollow them, hide them, whatever. If if someone's gone from, I'm trying to think, if someone is a friend of a friend but doesn't have that value for you, it's okay not to follow them. They don't get a big red sign that says, Doug didn't follow you, your life is hell. They don't get that. They just don't see your stuff. Okay? It's okay. I really have to explain it to some people. Some people think that when you hit that ignore button on Facebook, they get a flag on their screen that says, neener, neener, neener. Someone doesn't like you. They don't. They just don't see your stuff. It's okay. You, out of self-preservation, have to manage your own flow and get the most value out of that flow. Now that could be, you could be following someone who talks about wine because you're just like really interested in wine and really like wine. That may not be, valuable to your career, but it's valuable to you as a person. It's valuable to your life, and so therefore it has value to you. Make that decision each step along the way. You'll find that Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, they all have different feelings about them, different uses about them. You may find you like one better than the others, and that's okay. Most people end up with one kind of home base one that they interact with most frequently. In my case, it's Twitter. Twitter is kind of my home base, and everything feeds out to the other things from Twitter. But a lot of people have Facebook because they live and die in Facebook. That's okay too. Make the decision that's most valuable for you. Wherever it feels most comfortable, whatever it feels, whatever facilitates what you want to do most often, use that service. Let that become your home base. The blog, though, is always your home base. That's your home, and everything can feed into that blog, from Facebook, from Twitter, from Flickr, from podcasts, whatever. You now have a place to highlight what interests you most. Okay? So that's what the blog is great for. Finally, yes, question.
What about the possibility of having more than one Facebook site, a professional one versus a personal one, or a thing?
Good question.
In my case, it's not a problem for me now, but I've got a marriage and family therapy degree. In 10 years, I may have a private practice. I may want a separate, more of a professional, peer-oriented site, or something like that.
If you can do it, if you can bifurcate, I love big words, if you can split your online personality into two, more power to you.
It's tricky.
I have not been able to accomplish it.
Yeah.
I have tried it on several occasions because I have people who know me from this area of my life and I have people who know me from this area of my life and this area, but I'm the same person in all those areas. I just have different circles of friends. And that's when there was lots of talk a few years ago, you got to have, it's like, I was never able to do it. It might be a great idea, but I don't know how you do it because I am who I am and I am interested in what I'm interested in and I talk about what I talk about regardless of context. And so I just have not been able to do it. It's tricky. There will always be some bleed over. People like to say, well, I have my privacy settings on Facebook set so only... No. If you can figure out Facebook's privacy settings, more power to you. I can't.
Okay, then none of us can.
I can't. And there are points for leakage all over there. Your friend might see something, then they post it to some other site that's totally outside of Facebook. Well, guess what? It's not private anymore. That photo of you downing the kegger is out there to the public. Which is why, for myself, anything I post online, I have always taken the feeling that it is, by virtue of being online, it is public. I do not post something if I think that I would not want that to be public. And I think you need to think that way too. Don't think about privacy settings and other stuff. There's limits to that. Just approach it as if I put it out there, it's out there. If I don't want it out there, don't put it out there. Okay? Send it directly to the person, whatever. Don't post it in a public space. Unfortunately, a lot of Facebook people, when they first started, it was very private. You could actually make little groups, and your friends only your friends could see stuff. And well, now Facebook is just opening the doors wide open, and that's why they're getting a lot of flack. Those people had the initial perception that there were private areas of Facebook, and so those are the ones screaming most loudly when these changes get made, because they had a presumption at the beginning that no longer exists. I've always approached the presumption of no. If I put it online, it's public, and it will be there forever. Okay? And that's another thing to remember. You put something out there, it is there forever until the sun burns out and the servers melt in their closets. Okay? Okay? It's true. The internet has the longest memory of anything human has ever created in the world.